LGBTQ plus people do in fact grow old. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. You can find us here on YouTube or on our audio streams. They all come out on Wednesday for video and on Saturday for audio. FocusGroupRadio.com is our website. And you'll also learn about TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, which is a little shorter, about 20 minutes, 3 stories that catch our eye, and it's brought to you by Critics' Choice Video. Here on the Focus Group, we're brought to you by Deep Discount. We'll be visiting with them later in the broadcast. Mr. Bennett, as we have spring approaching, I was going through some photos, and you have not seen this photo yet. I need to send this to you. Do you know what I'm going to tell you about?
Is it the bunny?
Yeah.
Which I've asked, because your brother-in-law's mentioned the bunny. Your mother, one year at Easter, wanted you to dress up like a bunny for your nieces, right?
She did it 2 years running, and she rented a rabbit costume, an Easter bunny costume. And one year, her husband, Jim, was the Easter rabbit. And then I came up, he said, could you please be the rabbit? I want to take pictures. Now I know why he had me in that costume. I sweat. I was practically dripping wet. The head, the pictures from that day are quite hilarious. Greg was with us at the time, Greg Lieberman. And, he was, anyway.
I'm surprised you didn't put Greg in it.
Well, it was my height because Jim and I are kind of the same height. So Greg would have made a different kind of bunny, but he had a ball watching me suffer in the suit. And
did the girls know it was Uncle John?
Well, maybe not. But I came up from I think Emma did, because I came up from the basement later in my normal clothes, which were soaked through, and she just touches me and she goes, She goes, where was Uncle Johnny? I said, in a costume.
Did you have a little basket with eggs and stuff?
Yes.
Where did your mother come up with this idea?
Well, she loved Easter, and she always has loved the holidays. And when when my nieces were really young, she used to go out and hide things like the Easter eggs. She used to do a hunt.
My parents did the Easter egg hunt in the yard.
Bob used to misinterpret.
It's always a little cold in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
For that,
it was that kind of day where it was bright and sunny, but everything was brown and gray because it still hadn't popped spring yet. But Bob always misinterpreted this whole Easter thing. He's like, I'm not into this religious thing. I said, this is not about. I mean, yes, it is about religion. He is risen, hallelujah. But in our family, it was just chocolate in the baskets and the whole thing.
When I was younger, we would all we went to church. And you had your little Easter outfit on or whatever. But I'm shocked that Bob would say that, considering he's Mr. Christmas. Right?
He
doesn't
is,
like the religious aspect of it. Well, you're celebrating Jesus' birthday. Get a cake. Surprised we don't do a birthday cake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I found those when because I think I've told you about this project a number of times where I went through all our photo prints. And I did a culling, and I got it down from a bunch of boxes down to like 2 or 3. And now I'm doing the second wave of and it's good to give yourself a few months between what you first save and what you go through, because now I'm looking at pictures. I'm like, why did I save this? And I'm getting it down to a much more manageable thing so I could scan them. And then I want to make a book, like a photo album, so that it's a permanent thing. So if anything happens to the data, there's a book. I don't know. Maybe
now,
when
do you
I'm
have
dead.
pictures that are, some of these 110 cameras or whatever, when you would use these Instamatic? And when you try to blow them up or whatever, but they're blurry, they're fuzzy.
That's because of the grain of the film. They can't. Yeah. Well, the prints, when you scan a print that came to you from Kodak in I would say the 70s and 80s, there's not much beyond what you're getting on the print. Even the negative doesn't have that much more data on it. So my aforementioned brother-in-law, who's like, hey, Tim, you got to see John in that bunny costume. He figured everything out for scanning. In fact, I bought the scanner he recommended. He has the settings for it. And because he's like a photo guy, he's like, look, these prints, you can get what you can get out of them. But the amazing thing is when you go to a print that you've scanned, and let's say it's from the late 70s, early 80s, and how they shift blue or red.
Right.
And you go into like a program like Photoshop or something, you correct the picture, and it comes back to life. And you're like, wow. You see the real colors and everything. It's really cool.
So did you buy a scanner?
Yeah, it's by Phototech. I think it's called Phototech. I got it like 2 or 3 years ago in anticipation of this project moving a lot faster. It's still good to this day. You can scan very fast. In fact, you put a picture and zing, it pulls it through right away, and boom, you got it scanned.
What about these things that you get these apps where they say they can do it with slides or with pictures with your phone or with a tablet? Have you tried those?
No, I haven't. And you can scan quote unquote with your phone, but what are you really doing? You're actually taking a picture of a picture, right? Yeah. And the phones, hey, look, the phones have 12 megapixels, their cameras are pretty decent, so you could do it.
Well, you'll have to give me the info for that because my mom has tons and tons and tons of photographs that are in shoeboxes, as I do. And I know so you're going to make it into a book? Like book?
Bob did it with his family photos, his older family photos, the kind that are the, they're not quite daguerreotypes, but they're not quite as old as the Civil War, but they go back. They're the old ones. And he has put together 4 family albums of both sides of his family, all the way up into the present day. And they're great, and you could just pick it up and flip through.
Did he label them, or just have the pictures, or did he label?
He put captions in, especially for some of the older photos of the relatives. I'm just thinking of just putting a bunch of pictures on a page, like collage type, and just page, and loosely doing it chronologically from childhood up until adulthood.
You do any like our friend Mrs. C and cut people out, heads out?
One of our favorite days when she takes this 8x10 out, and the person in the middle's cut out, and there's her and her husband.
She glued it together. She didn't like the way we looked, but we didn't like the bride and groom.
She didn't like
so
that,
she put it together. And then there was another one. She had a big like group photo, and there were little heads cut out.
Mm-hmm. I didn't like them. I didn't like her. Tim is referring to our friend's mother who we visited one day, and she pulled out some old family albums. And as we were flipping through, we were like, what happened? Did someone cut the... Oh, yeah, I didn't like them. I like the way we look. I didn't like them. We were like, hilarious. We loved it. We loved her. She is great. Well, I was up in Connecticut last week, actually, taking care of my mom for a few days. And I think you and I talked about this after I got back.
Where the past is still present.
Boy, has it changed him. I mean, I was riding on roads that you and I were on as kids, and it was woods. When we were younger, it was all undeveloped. Now it's house, McMansion, house, everywhere.
And it was so dark. I still find that there's still areas where it's just so dark. Mm-hmm. We're so used to streetlights and things, having been away from there. But you realize how dark it was and how windy. And nothing was labeled. Nothing's.
Oh, Tim, some of these roads you could not go more than 15 miles an hour on. And I remember going a lot faster as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
I even drove my mom and I to our first high school. Were we at the original Pomperog for 2 years?
Yes, our freshman and sophomore year. We were in. I was in a. What do they call those? A studio, or what was the
satellite building?
Temporary classroom.
Yes.
I forget what the hell they called those.
You know what? It's so funny you bring it up because I said, my mom goes, where are you going? So I made a left. I was coming down the main street. I made a left at the South Bay. Well, what was it called? The Yankee Plaza now, or some of the original shopping
Union Square.
Union Square. That's it.
Right.
I make a left and I go up the road, and suddenly I see our old high school, which the gymnasium is the same, and that used to be separate. Remember, we used to walk outside to get to the gym, rain, snow, whatever. Now that's connected. The front of the building looks a little different, but then you park. And by the way, the parking lot is covered in solar panels. Have you been there lately?
I haven't. I have driven by, but I haven't gone actually. And they've changed the name of the school. It's now Rochambeau.
Rochambeau, that's right.
The
middle school. That was an
middle school that I went to. But what I find odd about that, when we were in high school, I was on track team, as you know, and we had no facilities.
Yeah.
And so we would just practice on a field or practice on the same field as soccer. And it was lumpy, and there was no track, there was no nothing. And then we would go to these schools from these other towns, like
which beautiful
New Milford,
or
the Bruce Jenner track, which was over in Newtown, the town next to us, the Newtown High School, named after Bruce Jenner because he had gone there and he was the decathlete, won the Olympics. And we would be like, oh my God, look at this. But nobody ever complained.
No.
That we didn't have any facility. When I think about it now, we had no facilities.
No.
But we made do.
I mean, we had a weight room. There was the gymnasium. There was so first when you pull in, school looks a lot smaller than it did when I was. Yeah, okay, so it's small. Secondly, the entire parking lot is covered with these cantilevered things that are that holding up solar panels. And my mom goes, "Isn't that it's ingenious, really, right? Because it's dead space. It's a parking lot." And then I drove around to, oh, Tim, I had the name of the building on the top tip of my tongue. Those rooms that were detached that you were in. You were like in a
portable classrooms.
The portable
They were called portable class, and they were red.
They were red with white trim and stairs. Those are gone. And I got out of the car and I walked around a bit. And I remember I could literally point to the biology lab. I could point to the music room. One of the satellite rooms was a music class thing. I get back in the car and my mom's like, "Did you enjoy your trip down memory lane?" I'm like, "I don't know." I'll get back to you on that one.
You were lucky you were a Middlebury kid because I don't think you had portable classrooms.
No, we didn't.
So in Southbury, because of the growth of Southbury, that's all I was ever in. So 5th grade, 6th grade, yeah. And even in high school, and typical of, Southbury, and you can just imagine who was running the towns. They put all the new kids were in these portable classrooms. So I was in there with anybody who moved in new. So we weren't part of the old guard. So I wasn't with Leah May or Marianne or anybody. I was with Ed Moran. I was with Paul Lavallee. All the new families that moved in, we were stuck in these portable classrooms. And again, you had to go out. Now they would never allow it, right? You'd walk out in the elements. There was no. It was. I thought about that the other day. That those portable classrooms were.
We survived, Tim.
Yeah.
We survived, and here we are. It was. I also got lost in Heritage Village. Now I didn't get lost.
Well, that's easy to do.
I do this. Yeah, I do this thing where I drive around with my mom, and she starts getting worried, and then I call up on CarPlay. I'll plug in where I want to go, and it maps it out. And she's like, "Wow, this is an amazing technology." I didn't realize how dense the village was and how much acreage they own. Oh my God! And it all looks the same. Yep. You'd be driving down a road, you're like, "Oh, this is that unit, that's that unit." And
did you go to Victor Borga Hall? That was all his land.
That was really okay.
Yeah.
Victor Borga.
Yeah, that was all his land.
And of course you remember the old Southbury Bazaar, but that's inherited. That's gone now.
It was sad that's gone away.
I remember the bazaar quite well. Anyway,
the only Chinese restaurant in town.
Town was out at the Heritage Bazaar, Heritage Village, which was a senior community, by the way. If we should be explaining ourselves better.
I know. I asked my mom if she wanted to go there. She said it changed when my dad passed away. So, a lot of times people move to the village, and I think at one time she had thought maybe she and my dad would go, but no, I'm not so sure she's a villager. Not so sure she's going to
While we were driving around, my mom, who, she's in her late 80s, and the memory, the short-term stuff is a little problematic, but her long-term memory is quite good. And we were driving by this one unit, and she said, "Oh, yes. Ginny Porter used to live there, and she complained about the construction standards. Always a problem here in the village."
Exactly. My dad said the same thing. Yeah, my dad said they weren't built very well.
No, they weren't.
They leaked, like the windows are bad. Yeah, there was a million problems. And everyone thought it was a fire trap. It was all wood, right?
Yeah, it's
and noisy.
It looks,
and hear the people right next to you.
So I could see it. Well, my mom's not ending up there because she heard bad experience from a bunch of people. So
yeah, oh, that's funny.
So if you're new to our show, then you just got the first dose, which is Tim and I catch up and we banter a bit, and then that's followed by this segment we're going to do next called Caught Our Eye. We bring some news items to each other's attention and to yours, and that's followed by a visit with our partner Deep Discount, quick break, business birthday, the only show in the universe that does that, and then we'll have a shop talk, which is an article about. Well, I thought it was one thing, and it's another, and but it's about queer people. Thing. Yeah. Queer people aging, and some media and some short films that have been devoted to that illuminate some interesting stories and people. So without further ado, Mr. Bennett, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
I've always been, ever since 7th grade, speaking of our time in school, I've always been fascinated by states and names and how they got names. And a lot of times people in other countries ask why out west everything is a straight line, but out east everything's kind of squiggly. Or the smaller states. So I found this article, 8 states whose names were almost very different. So this story was, I believe this was through NPR, but so they went through a number of the states and but they talk about what the states' names almost were or what was considered. And so the first state, I'm going to see if you can guess any of these. So the first state that is out west, and it's where Las Vegas is. So you know what that state is, right? Do you have any idea what that state was almost called?
Well, we know it ended up being Nevada. So Was it even remotely like a tribal or something? No. Okay, what was
I
it?
was shocked. I was shocked in this one. So there was an explorer that made his way out there, and he did scientific exploration. And he was very fascinated with geography. He traveled all over South and Central America. And he also was the first one to figure out that altitude sickness was caused by a lack of oxygen. So there was another fellow explorer named John Fremont, who really liked and appreciated all this work that Humboldt did. So they were going to call the name of the state Humboldt, Humboldt. So it would be Las Vegas Humboldt.
But oddly, Tim, isn't one of the main drags in the old Vegas Fremont Street?
Right. It's after John Fremont.
Fremont, okay. So a little bit got in.
The next state is Utah. Any idea about Utah?
Latter-day Saints. Maybe it was related to the religion itself somehow?
Yes, you're right. So the origins of Utah are closely tied to the Mormons who left New York, and they made their way out to the area that we know as Utah. And they decided they wanted to call the name, they wanted to give it some sort of religious, nod to Mormonism.
Mm-hmm.
And so the name of one of the Book of Mormons, there's a book called the Book of Mormon has a chapter. I don't even know what you would call it. Anyway, Deseret was what they.
That was
going to
be the name of the state.
Yeah, Deseret.
Salt Lake City, Deseret.
Deseret.
I like Utah.
Yeah. So they said that they wanted to use Deseret because they felt that Brigham Young felt that there was a bias toward anti-Mormonism in American society, and by using the name Deseret, that would have helped at least solidify that was Mormon territory. So it was named after the Book of Mormon. The state of Maine. So initially, it was going to be called New Somerset. But King Charles, when the Brits were in control in the 1700s, hated New Somerset. He hated the name. And they considered Yorkshire, Columbus, and Lagonia. But they ended up, King Charles had said that because he hated Somerset so badly, he said that he was adamantly going to refer to the region as the County of Maine, Mayne.
Huh.
But later on, the U.S. changed the name of the spelling of Maine to Maine. But it was going to be Maine.
Okay.
Kentucky. Kentucky has a university named after what this state was almost called. And it's also a famous place in Romania. Any guess?
No.
Where Dracula's from?
It wasn't like Vanderbilt or wait, Dracula was from why am I spacing
Transylvania.
on this? Transylvania. They weren't going to call it Transylvania, were they?
Yes, it was going to be Transylvania. So Kentucky was going to be known as Transylvania, and they back in 1775 it was called the Transylvania Company had gone out there. And the explorers, and they wanted to call it, they said the roots of Sylvania referred to a wooded area, and meant across. And so, because you had to cross the Appalachians, so they were going to call it Transylvania. But did not stick.
Thank God.
Yeah. The state of this place was going to be called Texlahoma or Sequoia.
Well, it sounds like Texas or Oklahoma, right?
Oklahoma.
Oh,
So, there were several bills. So we talked about on our show, TFG Unbuttoned this week, about states that wanted to split off. There was some, as they were developing the Oklahoma Territory, there were a number of counties from what is now Oklahoma and Texas that wanted to form their own state. They were going to call it Texlahoma. But the U.S. government, there were also a number of Indian tribes, of course. 55 Native American tribes live in Oklahoma. And the tribes, it was the Cherokee, the Creek, the Seminole, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and they had wanted to pick a name that they felt gave a nod to the heritage, the Indian heritage in the Indian Territory. And so they went in front of Congress and they wanted the name, the Indians were supporting the name Sequoia, Sequoyah.
Okay.
But there was, of course, anti-Native American bias.
Sentiment, yeah.
And so they did call it Oklahoma, which they said does come from the Choctaw language, meaning honorable nation. So that's how Oklahoma got its name. West Virginia was going to be called Kennewa.
Kennewa. Where was that coming from?
The original proposed name was the state of Kennewa, although some were worried that this would be confused with the existing county of the same name, which was which was there. And and then actually Benjamin Franklin proposed, he wanted to call a state somewhere. This is after the 13. Vandalia.
Ben got a lot of things right. I'm not sure about this one.
Yeah, the state of Vandalia, Vandalia. The name was in honor of George III's wife, Charlotte, reputedly a descendant of the Vandal people. The state was going to encompass West Virginia, parts of Maryland, Virginia, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania, but the Revolutionary War got in the way.
Kind of.
They also were going to call parts of that, or the other option was I can't even say it, West Sylvania.
No.
That didn't happen.
No.
And then two more here. I'll just do them quickly. Wyoming. I always wondered how Wyoming got its name. I don't think anybody will guess this. There was a U.S. representative from Ohio who was born in Pennsylvania, and he was born in the Wyoming Valley of Pennsylvania. And he decided to name, when they were picking names, they chose Wyoming. He said he regrets doing it once he visited because Wyoming was supposed to mean that it had a very had lots of valleys, and it had lots of valleys, and it was verdant, lots of crops, fertile land, all these sort of things that Wyoming did not have when he visited. But the name stuck. So it says Wyoming, and then the people of Wyoming, as they realized that maybe Wyoming didn't look as it meant in definition, they came up with names Cheyenne, Yellowstone, Bighorn, and Sweetwater. But Wyoming ended up sticking, and so it's retained its historical link to Pennsylvania.
But all those names have stuck around for national parks and stuff, right? Yeah.
Right. And then Colorado was initially going to be called Idaho. And again, when they opened up mining territories, they were just trying to come up with names, and the Colorado area was initially, when it joined the Union, going to be called Idaho from the Kiowa word for enemy, but they decided not to do that. But then when they did open up, when they were opening up the mining territories, they did finally name a state Idaho. There's also a couple of other states that wanted to break off. Long Island wanted to become its own state.
As Long Island?
As Long Island. It would be bigger than Rhode Island and Delaware, more populated than a number of states. And includes, but the problem was it would include Queens and the Bronx.
Yeah, which are part of Manhattan. That could be problematic.
So that was problematic. So they said New York's not going to let it go. So that was going to be its own state. There was also the Dakotas had talked about making themselves one state, Dakotas, instead of North and South. And there's a few others that have threatened over the years to break away or change names. But those were the names.
I like that one. And you have always been fascinated by the states and their names and a whole bunch of U.S. history stuff and how they did get them. I mean, a representative from Pennsylvania naming
Wyoming.
A Western state that he's never been to. I like that valley. Let's call it Wyoming.
Wyoming Valley. Well, I always thought it was weird that Pennsylvania had Wyoming Valley. I thought, why would they name that? And obviously it came before the state.
And did you think that maybe it came after, like that Wyoming came first?
I thought so, yeah, it was unincorporated and they named it Wyoming, because I always thought that was weird. But
I love that. That was a great caught your eye. That was an excellent one. Mine could not be any different, and it's sort of a cautionary tale.
Uh-oh.
And the headline reads, "Man says Apple was incredibly unhelpful after his iPhone was stolen." So this was an intriguing story for a couple reasons. A guy went to a pizza place, and then he went to meet his friends at a bar in Manhattan. The guy's 28 years old. His name is Trent. And when he left the bar, he tried to use his phone, but it didn't respond, and he thought maybe the battery died. So he put it back in his pocket, and he continued his evening until later on, when he pulled his phone out again, he realized it was a dummy phone.
Wow.
It was literally like a fake iPhone. And so he immediately contacted the police, and he also contacted Apple with a plea for him to change his password, because nowadays your phone is basically your wallet, right?
Right.
So whoever took the phone immediately charged a number of things. And so on this guy's iPad, he saw things start popping up in different accounts. $1,600 was charged here, $300 there. Someone withdrew $980 from a Venmo account. And so when he was on the phone with Apple, they're like, look, you can only make one password request change in a 24-hour period. And you have to wait till a day passes. But the thief himself, the guy that stole the phone, also made a password request change. So Apple didn't know who to believe, even though this guy had all his ID. He could prove who he was. They're very leery about doing this stuff. And if you don't get an approval on a password request done, the next request you can make is 27 days later.
Oh, my God. See, that's absurd, don't you think?
I do too. And it says here, despite being able to prove his identity to speed up the process, Trent said that Apple told him he could be anyone and therefore wouldn't take any action. It was incredibly frustrating, especially because the thieves had access to everything, and I could see them opening up my messages before even I could.
God.
Could you imagine getting, almost 2 weeks after the theft, Trent finally regained access to his Apple account, but then realized that he needed to change all of his documents, including his passport and driver's license, because the thief had copies. Sometimes you're going on a trip, you photograph your passports,
Right.
and everything is in that phone, right?
I wonder if he had gone to the police, if they would have helped. But I
But
guess
he
the
did
police
file a
aren't going
police
to listen.
report, but they're like, okay, that's the physical object. Now you got the protection of the data is Apple's thing. They looked at another woman they looked at another victim of this kind of crime earlier this year. Insider reported that Rayan Ayas, whose iPhone was stolen in November and who also found Apple unhelpful in regaining her account access, discovered that by the time her ordeal was over, she had managed to rack up $10,000 missing out of her bank account. Apple did not respond for comment. Now, I'll backtrack a bit and say what the police told this young man was that the thief in question followed him and watched his finger unlock the passcode screen. So if you don't have Face ID or fingerprint ID on your phone and you're relying on doing that little 6-number thing, apparently there are some people who are clever enough to figure out what that sequence is. So he was followed to a number of his places. At the bar, when he put his phone on the table or on the bar, that's when the guy swapped out the dummy for the real one, opened his phone because he had successfully guessed the passcode and had access to everything. I guess the
That's
reason
a lot of work.
Isn't it? Think about it.
Jeez.
Hey, but the rewards are, in that one case of the young woman whose phone was stolen, 10,000 gone, right? In this guy's case, it was close to 2,000. I guess I'll just conclude this. Like, Apple offers two-factor identification. The Apple ID thing is pretty secure. You have to have a device or two that you can send a code to. I would just highly recommend securing your data, backing it up. And if Apple offers two-factor, I would use it, because these things they're everything, right?
Wow.
I would say that's the same with your Gmail account, too. Like, I read an article by a journalist whose wife's account was hacked. Google locked it down. He was a tech journalist, and he was able to actually talk to Google and figure out how to get it unlocked and a backup given to her. But since she didn't use this thing called two-factor identification, where they send you a text message to confirm your account, they had a hard time letting her have it back again. And he said, you have no idea what's in your Gmail account. We're so used to searching for something like a password or a sales receipt or, a software code that we take it for granted. But imagine if suddenly it was, boom, cut off. The day I read that Wired article about that woman who lost her account and her husband had written the article, I went and I locked up all my accounts.
Did you do the two-factor, or did you do do you do facial recognition?
My phone is fingerprint.
Fingerprint.
My iPad is facial recognition. Either is fine with me, because unless you want to pick up someone's thumb and put them on the thing, right?
Huh.
So,
That reminds me, there was a story in automotive news about Volkswagen. I don't know if you saw that one, where the Volkswagen was stolen and it had a baby in it. And so Volkswagen had the equivalent of like an OnStar, one of these telematics systems where they track the car. They can track the car because of the GPS. Well, they refused to tell the owner where the car was because they had not paid their subscription for And
Wow.
now, of course, Volkswagen's backpedaling because the police were involved. I mean, there was a baby. It wasn't a stolen car. It wasn't the fact it was just a stolen car. This woman's baby was in the car.
Was in the car.
And the police wanted to know where it was. And Volkswagen, the person at the call center would not give them, oh, we can see the car, would not give them location, would not tell them anything. Volkswagen has since backpedaled and said, this should never have happened. They should have immediately told the police where that car was or whatever. But it's bad PR.
Yeah. This whole thing with our phone, like our wallets are one thing. Phone's another level of information completely.
Right.
I mean, if someone steals your wallet, the most they're going to get is a couple of pieces of ID, credit cards, and cash. The phone is, oof.
Yeah.
Anyway, a seminal tale for you. Two very different caught your eyes, and now we're going to move on to our friends at Deep Discount. As I mentioned at the start of the broadcast, Deep Discount is a partner of ours here on the Focus Group, and we would love for you to shop their site by going to ours, focusgroupradio.com, and clicking on the Deep Discount logo and start your shopping experience. It's a spring site-wide sale. Tim and I love the site-wide sale because everything is on sale. They're normally great prices to begin with, but they're even better.
Right.
So here we are at the Shark Madness site-wide sale. What did you you went spelunking? What did you pick out
I went
of the
spelunking. A movie that I don't think ever could be made again, nor do they make these sort of movies anymore. But we've talked about this movie before, but what I like about this particular version, it comes to us from our friends at the Criterion Collection. So Criterion has given this the stamp of approval. It is in Blu-ray format and for under $30. And the title is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, which was released in 1963, which I remember as a kid watching this and loving it.
Yeah.
There's a group of strangers who learn about $350,000 in hidden treasure, which was bazillion dollars in, right?
back then, yeah.
And they've got to go find it. And it includes so many from Spencer Tracy, Milton Berle, Sid Caesar, Buddy Hackett, Ethel Merman, Mickey Rooney, Phil Silvers, Jonathan Winters, Curly.
Dick Shawn.
It goes on and on and on that you can't imagine them ever being able to do. Like, do they ever do movies like this anymore? This
No,
is
and
kind of madcap comedy.
These are the classic comics of the day. Like
Comics
Terry
of the day.
Thomas was the
Yeah.
British guy with the gap in his teeth.
Yep. Terry
Yeah.
Thomas, Jonathan Winters, right. The list keeps going on and on and on. So I was shocked by it and wondering, because in the for the Criterion Collection, they actually are doing you get some, aside from the theatrical release, you'll also get audio commentary. There's a documentary about the making of it.
wow.
There's interviews. There's TV spots and radio spots that use to advertise it, and then all the theatrical trailers that they use to show to promote the movie. So you're not only getting the movie, but you're getting all that inside information.
And
which
frankly,
people love.
it's the inside behind this, because if you've seen the movie, then everything on the Criterion disc is just going to give you like more reason to love it, right?
Yeah. So
Tim, do you remember you did a Caught Your Eye or Business Birthday about was it a hamburger chain? And the owner loved this movie so much that he always used to put the two palm trees to crisscross
it was
each
In-N-Out.
other.
In-N-Out burger.
In-N-Out Burger, okay, because the end of the movie, they had to look for the W shape that was made by the crisscrossing palm trees,
yeah.
out in Santa Monica or something. Yeah,
Yeah. So when they would build these In-N-Out restaurants out west, they would do the palm trees like the movie.
It's a madman.
Yeah.
So that tells you how much that movie's loved. I picked a movie that I really love because I love the book as well, and both were fantastic. It's The Remains of the Day, and Remains of the Day is based on a book by Kazuo Ishiguro, and who's an incredible author. Starred Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson, and they both play. Anthony Hopkins in particular plays a butler at a big old house in England, and Emma Thompson comes on as the new, she's the head housekeeper and in charge of all the maids and stuff. But the story is woven into this whole thing about, when Anthony Hopkins was butler years before, the Lord of the Manor was one of these Nazi sympathizers who actually held meetings at the house prior to World War II to see if they couldn't be an appeaser. They could maybe work somehow with Hitler. He wasn't so bad after all. Christopher Reeve plays the modern-day owner of the house from America. Hugh Grant stars as the past owner, the Earl who lived there. and it was called Darlington, like Darlington Manor. That Hugh Grant was the Lord Darlington.
Right.
Really, really well done. Won some Academy Awards, and this is one of those films where I don't see too often on TV. So I think that if you're interested in revisiting Remains of the Day and some really great performances and some beautiful cinematography where they shot this at, I highly recommend Remains of the Day. And our release this week is a movie that came and went in the blink of an eye. And this is one I really want to see because of everything I'd read written about it. It's called Babylon. It's an original epic set in 1920s Los Angeles, led by Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, who I adore, and Diego Calva, with an ensemble cast including Jovan Adepo, Lee Jun Lee, and Gene Smart. Gene Smart, brilliant if you know her in Hacks. A tale of outsized ambition and outrageous excess that traces the rise and fall of multiple characters during an era of unbridled decadence and depravity in early Hollywood. Need you know more? Right?
Was this wasn't there is this a remake?
I don't know.
No.
Unless you're thinking of a book that we all had as younger gay men called Hollywood Babylon, which was all about the LGBTQ mysteries of Hollywood back in the day.
Right, and I thought there was another one. Maybe I'm getting it confused. You know movies far better than me, so you're probably correct.
No, so this one it apparently was eviscerated by the critics. Whenever that happens, I scratch my head and say, okay, a lot of talent went into something. I'm going to give it a chance. Blu-ray, $22.99. I do want to see it because I love Margot Robbie and I love some of these other characters, the character actors. So it's on my list.
So perfect. So head over to focusgroupradio.com and you can find the deep discount logo there. As John mentioned, there's a spring site-wide sale going on, and that means everything is on sale. Not only movies and TV, but you'll also see music, games, and books and toys and gifts and a bunch of other things there. The movie I picked this week comes from our friends at Criterion. It's titled "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World."
Still is.
And it still is. John picked The Remains of the Day, and the new release this week is Babylon. So again, head over to Deep Discount by going to focusgroupradio.com, and you'll see the logo there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got Business Birthday and also a shop talk for you, so stay tuned.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is the website, and you'll learn all about us there, including TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast. And a big thanks to Deep Discount. You can visit them by going to FocusGroupRadio.com and clicking on Sharky, the Deep Discount logo. So, as promised with every show, the only show in the universe that does this, we have a business birthday for you.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So celebrating today, or if he was alive, he'd be celebrating. It's Hans Wilsdorf. You know Hans, John?
Well, the minute you put what he was
off your tongue.
Wilsdorf. That Wilsdorf boy is going to make something of himself.
Well, he sure did. He died at 79 years old, but he was born today, March 22nd, in 1881. He's the founder of Rolex and Tudor watches. And so he was born in Germany. Family died, or his parents had died when he was young, and he was sent off. His uncles had sent him to some of the best private schools. And he said, while they didn't care much about the fate of the kids from the family, that it helped them become self-reliant. So he actually chalks that up to the success that he had in the world. He went to, after school, he had gone and went to work for a Swiss watchmaker. And his job was to wind hundreds of pocket watches each day and verify that the times were
Wait,
accurate.
he had to wind the pocket watches.
Hundreds of them each day.
Okay.
He had to verify that the watches were accurate. And so they said he gained some watchmaking skill by working for this Swiss maker. And he ended up, Wilsdorf in 1903 moved to England. And he was under the impression that although the pocket watch was the watch of the day, particularly for men, he had thought that there was going to be a great marketing ability for and use of and development of the wristwatch. And actually his philosophy, which I thought was funny, he said he was going to sell the wristwatch would be the watch of the time. In our time, he said, just you wait and see. And he said one of his philosophies was that only great marketing is needed to make a company successful. Well, I don't know about that. You have to have a good product, don't you?
I agree. Yeah.
So he went to London, started his own company, and would sell these wristwatches. So he was buying parts from the Swiss, and then assembling these watches in England from a company called Wilsdorf and Davis. And this was 1908. He was trying to think of a name. He took all the letters of the alphabet and kept trying to come up with names for this watch company. And he said he was sitting on one of the London cheap kind of London double-decker bus, powered by horses, and some little genie whispered in his ear, Rolex.
In other words, the name just came to him, right?
Just popped to him, and that's how he came up with Rolex. So in World War I, he launched this watch company, and in his personal opinion, he said he felt that the watches were so successful, and because they kept time well and they were so accurate that it was going to make the pocket watch, it was going to replace the pocket watch, which it certainly did. The British government implemented a 33% customs duty on the Rolex watch, so he moved the headquarters to Geneva, where it remains today. And he decided to develop a number of different types of watches over the years. Some of them used for the Air Force, some he made for Pan Am pilots for their accuracy. He had some that could go underwater, some that were waterproof for submariners. And then in 1946, because of the cost, people thought Rolex watches could be too expensive. He developed his Tudor watch, which had a lot of the same components and you could still buy today. The one thing he did do, and he added time, the little window with the time and the date. And then he decided to donate essentially all of his money in the whole foundation, which is still in existence today, to goods, or to the welfare and good of people in Geneva and around the world. So he had set up this foundation. So 100% of the profits to this day still go to this foundation and to take care of people. That's
amazing. Did you ever know that before you researched him for the birthday?
I had no idea. It says he had died. He's buried in Geneva. The Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, which was established in 1945, still owns and controls Rolex and still donates 100% of its profits to the needy and to the care of people around the world in this foundation.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. So that was our birthday. Rolex watch. You have a Rolex watch? You ever want one?
I've never had one, no. And they are status symbols beyond belief, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of dealers want them, car dealers. They used to do, when I was in the car business, they used to do sales contests where you'd get a Rolex watch or something. I never got one. Some people did. But
I never got one.
Well, I wasn't interested in it, but a lot of people were all excited about the Rolex watch, but it just never, I don't know. I like watches, but it just never did anything for me.
I remember when we first moved to the city when I was out of college, Canal Street used to have a lot of knockoffs. If you wanted a Rolex, you would go down to Canal Street, and we used to call it the trays of gold because there'd be just table after table of these fake Rolexes. And after a while, you realize a watch is a watch. It's going to tell the time. Either it doesn't or it does. The battery works, it doesn't. And Rolex, it's just, what are you going to, it's a status symbol. It's like a friend of mine used to say, it was Hazel when she was doing our research. She'd be like, Rolex to Rolex. That's when executives would be Rolex to Rolex. That's when
Rolex.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine, I said, do you want to get a Rolex watch? And she said to me, she goes, I don't need anything accurate to the second. My life's not accurate to the second. So whether my watch is 2 or 3 minutes late, it doesn't matter.
I like that one. That's a good
Timex
one.
is $12 at the drugstore. You lose it, you go get another one.
Yeah, our Timex was in our town. Was it
Takes
like
a
Milbury,
licking,
right?
keeps on ticking.
Ticking, and I used to always get one every couple of years. I got one at Easter or Christmas. I love Timex; they did the job. All right, as we talked about at the beginning of the broadcast today, we have an article that talks about basically queer people grow old too. I mean, it's one of those things where we are a youth obsessed culture, and even in the LGBTQ community, given the fact that we've had some horrific things happen, namely HIV/AIDS and the recent COVID-19 pandemic, gays and lesbians, LGBTQ individuals are aging. And this article that I found kind of discusses where they're at in life, what they're doing, and they also talk about a couple of movies and shows that have been based, or documentaries,
Right.
like one in particular called "Where Do All the Old Gays Go?" Well, I can tell you one place.
Florida.
They go there, and they go to Palm Springs, right? Springs is very. So, what did you make of the article?
I thought it was it was interesting in that it's something you and I have talked about. A number of people have talked about, particularly anyone who grew up in the '80s, where so many people were devastated or affected by the AIDS crisis and the discrimination that came with it. And so there was certainly shame and people that had lost their partners or whatever, and a lot of people didn't talk about it. So it's kind of institutionalized prejudice. And so I thought it was interesting. The other thing we've talked about since people are aging now and are more open as to who they are, there is a shortage of not only health services for people, but these retirement homes or nursing homes or senior homes that we would have that they think. I know New York has some. They've opened 1 and 2 in Philly. I know they've opened some out west. But one of the authors said that we would do well to try to come up with a group of places for people that are aging to be able to live in their senior years. And so I thought that was an interesting part about the article as well. The one in Philadelphia that they've done, the federal government actually sponsors some of it, and there's a long list of people wanting to get in. And I think New York has the same thing, don't they?
Yes, they do. SAGE actually built a couple of, and SAGE is an organization that focuses on LGBTQ plus elders, and they built a building of residential units out in Williamsburg that had a waiting list before it even went up. Right. and that's the story about all these. I think Palm Springs has a couple going up too. This article that I found, Queer People Grow Old Too, a lot of it was discussing media, like movies and documentaries and podcasts and photographers who have chronicled this transition of all of us who have made it from the 80s into the 90s, the 2000s, et cetera, and what challenges lie ahead. I read the article, and I went and I looked at another article that I had bookmarked quite a while ago, and it was about a woman who was preparing to move into a nursing home. Her husband had passed away. She didn't want to keep the house. I'm sorry, her partner had passed away. She didn't want to keep the house. And she said, I'm steeling myself for going back in the closet once I go in the nursing home. She said, you got to be really careful in places like that. It just gave me pause because, I suppose we're going to see that, right? That's going to be an issue.
Yeah, well, it says here after they talk about a couple that's doing the same thing that you just mentioned. It said after decades of being out and proud and being gender nonconforming, I guess one of the people in this couple, they started feeling pressure to suppress their identity when trying to deal with nurses and hospital staff and trying to get housing. And they said so for all these years that they were out and open, living authentic, to go into one of these facilities now in retirement community, they think that they have to be careful because they might not be accepted. So, gosh, talk about later in life not being accepted again, right?
Which is just so heartbreaking on one level. You expect, we've seen so much progress over the last couple of years, and now just in the short time period, so many steps backward. Maybe it's because of the pandemic that, I don't know. I think about this quite often because the thing you just mentioned, waiting lists, moving into a home, right, going back into the closet, this really makes the idea of aging in place, especially if you're LGBTQ plus, almost the only option you have? Does that sound, you know what I'm getting at? Like, it's not like you can plan to go to some, I guess you could, if you have enough money, be somewhere where everybody's accepting, right?
Yeah, my guess is it's all geographical too in some regards. I'm sure that there are places that aren't LGBT specific in the Northeast, for instance, but are probably very accepting. Like, it's not an issue. It's like going to a certain college.
Would you ever consider living in a different country in your retirement years?
Me? No.
Really?
No. Why would you?
I just read a couple articles recently where people, the authors opined that as they watched the culture war accelerate and this blue-red divide, us versus them, right versus left, and of course the gay community, LGBTQ plus community, is sort of in the middle of this battle again. The crosshairs are all on anti-trans issues, book banning, the whole bit. They just, having been through this before, they were just wondering, like, can I just extract myself from the problem and live in Spain or Portugal? And that's actually two of the countries that pop up in a lot of people's thinking about relocating somewhere. But I imagine they have their issues too.
Yeah, and I think if you had a bunch of friends that did that, or you knew that there were people there for you, because you and I have talked about
connectivity.
Connectivity. My issue with going, because I've heard Portugal, Spain comes up, Costa Rica, a number of different places in South America, but you need to know the language.
Yes,
and are you going to learn the language, or are you going to be able to get the health care you need? I know a lot of people, not a lot. I know a few people that have done Mexico, but they've all kept a studio apartment or something in the States
so they can come back,
for healthcare. We have a good friend and her husband that just traveled the world for the last 9 months.
I know. I was going to ask you to mention her. Yeah.
Well, they were going to find, their new place, and they had it down to 4. And at the end of the day, they've decided on the United States.
Yeah.
And it may be France, but the cost, the living in France, is different being a tourist than it is living there, right? But so I was shocked because I thought for sure they were considering Thailand, Argentina, Mexico.
They took a whole year to check it out.
Traveled all over the world. And I was shocked when she said to me, I said, so what did you decide? And she goes, nothing beats New York City. I was like, I said, well, that's
Tim,
interesting. Okay.
You brought up something that came up in an article that I read as well, when you specifically said, if you're going to live in one of these other countries, learn the language. And apparently, for expats, gay or straight, the locals are not pleased when you go there to live out your golden years and don't even attempt to learn the language.
Right.
They have a bit of a resentment about that. Now, if you make an attempt, they love you. It's like being in France or in Paris. You speak French as badly as you do. They still give you a thumbs up for trying, but they would prefer it if you learned. And there was one article I also read in reference to this whole aging, LGBTQ plus aging thing, where a couple did move to another country. They stayed for 2 years, and it was the lack of companionship.
Right.
The language barrier prevented them from making friends. Even those people that did speak English may not have been in their circle. And so after a while, they just felt very isolated, and they moved back to, of all places, Pittsburgh. So, Bob and I talk about this a lot. I think about, getting older, being around stimulus, museums, people, kids, dogs, the whole bit. A city's great for that. Our accountant, Tim, would yell at me. He yells at me all the time about this. You can't retire there. It's too expensive. Okay.
See, I think when it comes time, when the time comes for you and Bob to decide what you're going to do, I would say, my guess is you'll probably go upstate, whether you stay where you currently are or a different place. But then you can always do. I think you said you had neighbors that did this.
Oh,
I'm
glad
if
you
you
brought
said
up
you
Carol
if you
and
said
John,
you
yeah.
wanted to come in to see a show and see friends for dinner, and you come in and get a nice hotel for 3 or 4 nights, and then you leave, and it's someone else's problem. You're not paying
Carol
the
and
tax,
John,
you're
our
not doing all-
neighbors,
right?
who we have dinner with now and then. They used to live right here on 100th in Amsterdam. They had a house near ours upstate, and when pandemic came, they decided to sell the apartment in the city and live full-time upstate. It broke Carol's heart a little bit because she loves the city. It didn't break John's heart because he was a lawyer. He drove out to New Jersey every day,
Wow.
that horrible commute, right? So he was happy to be done with that. But she said, then one day they woke up and realized they could drive to the train station, take Amtrak or drive into town and park.
Right.
Because no matter what they spent on parking in hotels, it was never going to be equivalent to what they were spending on a year to live in the city.
And what you would make by selling your property in the city.
Yeah.
The thing is, and you'll find this, I found this in Philadelphia. I didn't, as we age, I use the city differently than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you use the city very differently now than you did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You don't use the city the same way. You still do things. You do things different now than you did 20 years ago, but you don't use the
Agreed.
city the same.
Yeah.
And so that's, it's a big choice. And New York is unique in the U.S. because it is a world city.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of great cities in the country, but
I agree with you. Proximity is going to be important for
Yeah.
me, not necessarily being in it. And I
Right.
think that's a great point.
yeah. So hey, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate the time you spend with us, and you can find all of our media at focusgroupradio.com. While you're there, you'll also see our friends at Deep Discount. Click on the logo and start shopping away. It's a site-wide sale, spring site-wide sale going on right now. This week, I recommended It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Classic.
John recommended The Remains of the Day, and the new release this week is Babylon. And while you're also there, you can find our podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned, and be sure to follow along with us on your platform of choice. Remember to stop texting when you're driving your car. Is that a better way to say it, John? Or don't text and drive, arrive alive is our slogan. But
Tim, let me tell you, we were coming back yesterday, and there was a pickup truck that was literally like a boulder in a stream. People were moving around it. And as you went by, there was a guy who had his hands on the steering wheel, with the phone, moving at 40 miles an hour while everybody's driving at 65.
probably playing Wordle. So, yeah, exactly. So anyway, have a great week and be safe. We'll see you on Tuesday. Take care.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.